The crystalline chamber of the Zephyrian High Council stretched endlessly upward, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with each speaker's emotional state. Commander Zax Corvin stood in the center of the circular floor, his forearms clasped behind his back, his scaled hide bearing the ceremonial scars of a decorated war veteran. Above him, 12 council members perched on floating platforms, their jeweled carapaces catching the light like living gemstones. High Councillor Vextar descended slowly, her platform humming with anti-gravity generators. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had never been questioned, never been wrong, and never been afraid. "The motion before us is simple," she announced, her words echoing in the vast chamber. "Earth possesses resources we require: water, rare minerals, and fertile land. The inhabitants are primitive, using chemical propulsion and crude energy sources. A single battle group should suffice for complete subjugation." Murmurs of approval rippled through the council. Zax felt his stomach tighten. He had requested this audience, had fought for months to get even these few minutes before the council. Now, watching their casual dismissal of an entire species, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. "I must object," Zax said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The murmurs stopped. 12 pairs of multifaceted eyes turned toward him. High Councillor Vextar's platform descended further, stopping just above his head. "Object. On what grounds, Commander? Your record shows exemplary service. Surely you do not question the superiority of Zephyrian forces." "I question the wisdom of this action," Zax replied carefully. "The humans are not as primitive as our intelligence suggests. I have fought them before." A sound like crystalline laughter filled the chamber. Councillor Di Carone, youngest of the council members, leaned forward on his platform. "Fought them. Commander, our records show no authorized conflicts with the Terran species. Mars," Zax said simply. 15 years ago, the mining colony incident that was classified and buried." The laughter stopped. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls shifted from amused blues to cautious ambers. High Councillor Vextar's eyes narrowed. "That was a minor skirmish with colonial miners," she said dismissively, "hardly representative of their military capabilities." "With respect, High Councillor, it was representative of something far more dangerous," Zax replied. "It was representative of what humans become when they are threatened." The chamber fell silent. Zax could feel the weight of 12 powerful beings, focused entirely on him. His next words would either save humanity or doom his own career. "I was a strike leader then," he began, his voice steady despite the memories flooding back. "Young, arrogant, convinced of our superiority, we were sent to secure the mining rights to Mars' northern hemisphere. Intelligence, said the human colonists, were lightly armed, mostly scientists and workers. We expected to land, intimidate them into submission, and claim the territory." He paused, his mind drifting back to that day. The red dust of Mars swirling around their landing craft, the small domed settlements scattered across the canyon floor, the confidence he had felt as his warriors prepared to establish dominance. "We landed with 300 elite warriors," Zax continued, "full battle armor, plasma weapons, tactical support, against approximately 800 humans, most of whom were archaeologists, geologists, and engineers. The odds were in our favor by every metric our strategists used. And yet you speak of this as a defeat," Councillor Veccarone observed, his tone mocking. "Surely 300 Zephyrian warriors could handle a few soft-skinned academics." "That was our assumption," Zax admitted. We broadcast our demands from orbit. Surrender, evacuate, leave Mars to its rightful inheritors. The humans requested 12 hours to consider our terms. Generous of them, another counselor commented, drawing more laughter from the assembly. It was a trap, Zax said quietly. The laughter died. Those 12 hours gave them time to prepare. Not to flee, not to surrender, but to prepare for war. The bioluminescent patterns on the wall shifted to deep purples and reds, reflecting the Council's growing interest. High Counselor Vextar gestured for him to continue. We landed at dawn on the second day, Zax said, his voice taking on the cadence of a field report. Perfect formation, overwhelming firepower, textbook assault. The human settlements appeared deserted. We thought they had fled. He closed his eyes, remembering the silence of those domed buildings, the way the red dust seemed to muffle every sound, the false confidence that had filled him as they advanced. The first explosive device detonated under our primary assault group, he continued. Crude by our standards, but effective. The humans had learned to weaponize their mining equipment. Industrial charges, blasting caps, even pressurized oxygen tanks. They turned their entire colony into a weapon. Improvised devices, Councillor Thecaron scoffed. Desperation tactics. Effective tactics, Zax corrected. But that was only the beginning. As we regrouped, they attacked from the canyon walls. Not with military precision, but with something we had never encountered before. They attacked with fury. The chamber had grown completely silent. Even the ambient hum of the life support systems seemed muted. Zax opened his eyes and looked up at the council members. They had studied our equipment during those 12 hours, he said. Analyzed our weapon signatures, our armor configurations, our tactical patterns. They knew exactly how to fight us. Impossible, High Counselor, Vextar declared. 12 hours is insufficient time for such analysis. For us, yes, Zax agreed. For them, it was enough. They had taken apart every piece of Zephyrian technology they could find. Communication devices, survey equipment, even the atmospheric processors we had provided for their initial colonization. They understood our systems better than we did. He began to pace, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. The memories were flowing now, 15 years of suppressed trauma breaking free. They used our own communication frequencies against us, he continued. Fed us false information, coordinated their attacks using our tactical channels. They had weaponized our plasma, rifles, turning them into area-denial weapons. They had modified our armor into mobile bunkers. And your response? High Counselor, Vextar asked, her tone no longer dismissive. We adapted our tactics, Zax said. Switched to closed frequencies, modified our approach patterns, brought in reinforcements. For every change we made, they countered within hours. It was as if they were learning from us in real time. He stopped pacing and looked directly at the High Counselor. They were not just fighting us. They were studying us. Every weapon we fired, every formation we used, every tactical decision we made, they absorbed it and turned it against us. Surely your superior numbers and technology eventually prevailed. Councillor Thecaron suggested, but his tone lacked its earlier confidence. We held the field for 6 days, Zax replied. 6 days of constant combat against an enemy that should have been defeated in 6 hours. They never stopped adapting, never stopped learning. When we thought we had them cornered, they would emerge. From somewhere else, when we adapted to their tactics, they would develop new ones. The outcome? High Counselor Vextar asked quietly. I was one of 23 survivors, Zax said, out of 300 elite warriors. The humans offered us safe passage off Mars in exchange for abandoning our claim to the planet. We accepted. The silence that followed was profound. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls had shifted to deep blues and purples, colors associated with fear and uncertainty. The official report listed it as a successful reconnaissance mission. Zax continued. The casualties were attributed to equipment failures and environmental hazards. The truth was classified at the highest levels. Because it was an anomaly, High Counselor Vextar said, but her voice lacked conviction. A single incident cannot define an entire species. It was not an anomaly, Zax replied firmly. It was a warning. The humans did not just fight us. They became something else. Something we had never encountered before. They became war itself. He turned to address the entire council, his voice carrying the weight of 15 years of nightmares. They do not fight like us, he said. They do not follow our rules, our traditions, our concepts of honor. They fight to survive, and in fighting, they become more than they were before. They adapt, they learn, they evolve. Every battle makes them stronger. You speak of them as if they are gods, Counselor Vekaron said, but his mockery sounded forced. I speak of them as they are, Zax replied. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their technology or their numbers, but because of what they become when they are threatened. They become unstoppable. High Counselor Vexter remained silent for a long moment, her platform hovering motionless above the chamber floor. Finally, she spoke. Your concerns are noted, Commander, she said. But the decision has been made. The Earth invasion will proceed as planned. We have learned much since the Mars incident. Our forces are better prepared, our intelligence more complete. You are making a mistake, Zax said, desperation creeping into his voice. You are about to awaken something that should be left sleeping. That will be all, Commander, High Counselor, Vextar said dismissively. You are dismissed. Zax stood his ground for a moment, looking up at the 12 council members. He saw arrogance, certainty, and the kind of pride that came before destruction. He had done what he could. He had delivered his warning. As you wish, he said finally. But when the fleet returns in pieces, when the survivors speak of the impossible things they witnessed, remember this moment. Remember that you were warned. He turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind him, the council members began to murmur among themselves, their voices filled with dismissal and disdain. But Zax noticed something else. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls had not returned to their normal blues and greens. They remained deep purple, the color of uncertainty and fear. Even the chamber itself seemed to understand what the council did not. The humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something else entirely, something that should not be provoked. The reckonings, 3 months after the High Council's dismissal of his warnings. Commander Zax Corvin stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, watching Earth grow larger in the view. The blue and white marble hung in the void like a jewel, deceptively peaceful, beautiful in its simplicity. Around him, the largest fleet in Zephyrian history moved in perfect formation. 200 vessels, carrying nearly 1 million warriors, all convinced they were about to claim the greatest prize in galactic history. Beautiful, isn't it? Admiral Krektos said, joining Zax at the observation deck. The Admiral was young for his rank, his carapace still bearing the bright colors of youth rather than the darker tones of experience, almost seems ashamed to scar it with conquest. It will be scarred, Zax replied quietly, but not in the way you expect. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement. Still carrying the burden of your Mars experience, Commander. Fear not. This fleet is 10 times the size of your colonial expedition. These are not miners and academics we face, but a proper military evaluation. That is exactly what I fear, Zax said, before the Admiral could respond. The ship's communication system crackled to life. The voice that emerged was distinctly human, speaking in accented but clear Zephyrian. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are entering the sovereign territory of the Terran Federation. State your intentions or prepare to be turned away. Admiral Kraktos moved to the communication station, his movements sharp with authority. This is Admiral Kraktos of the Zephyrian hegemony. We claim this system and all its resources by right of superior force. Surrender now, and your species will be permitted to exist as a client state. Resist, and face extinction. The response came immediately, without hesitation. Admiral Kraktos, this is Admiral Chen. Your terms are rejected. You have 1 hour to leave our system. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. The bridge fell silent. Even the tactical displays seemed to pause in their endless cycling of information. Admiral Kraktos stared at the communication console as if it had personally insulted him. 1 hour, he said finally. They give us 1 hour to retreat. Do they not understand the magnitude of the force they face? They understand perfectly, Zax said. They have been preparing for this moment since Mars. Impossible, Admiral Kraktos scoffed. Mars was classified. The humans could not have known about our capabilities. They knew enough, Zax replied. They knew we existed. They knew we were hostile, and they knew we would eventually come. The Admiral activated the fleet communication system. All vessels assume attack formation. We advance on the 3rd planet immediately. Show these primitives the cost of defying the hegemony. The fleet moved like a living thing, 200 vessels sliding into combat positions with practiced precision. Zax watched the tactical displays, seeing the perfect symmetry of their approach. It was exactly the kind of formation that would have overwhelmed any conventional opponent. Contact, the sensor operator announced. Multiple human vessels emerging from the asteroid belt. Count is ... uncertain. They appear to be using some form of stealth technology. Numbers, Admiral Kraktos demanded. Approximately 50 vessels. Admiral, much smaller than our ships, but their energy signatures are ... unusual. Zax moved to the sensor station, studying the readings. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human ships were not just smaller than Zephyrian vessels, they were completely different. Where Zephyrian ships were built for overwhelming firepower and heavy armor, these human vessels seemed designed for speed and maneuverability. They have been studying us, he said quietly. 15 years of analysis, and they have built a fleet specifically designed to counter our tactics. Irrelevant, Admiral Kraktos declared. No matter how cleverly designed, 50 ships cannot stand against 200. All vessels open fire. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed a barrage that should have ended the battle in seconds. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes filled the void with deadly energy. But when the light faded, the human ships were gone. Where did they go? Admiral Kraktos demanded. Everywhere, the sensor operator replied, his voice filled with confusion. they scattered in all directions. Some are moving toward the outer planets, others are heading for the asteroid belt. A few are actually approaching our fleet. Approaching. Are they surrendering? No, Admiral. They are attacking. The first human ship to reach the Zephyrian fleet was no larger than a courier vessel, barely 1,000th the size of the Eternal Dominion. It should have been vaporized by the dreadnought's defensive systems. Instead, it slipped through the weapon's fire with impossible grace, its hull seeming to bend light around itself. Stealth technology, Zax breathed. They have developed active camouflage. The small human ship fired a single torpedo, a weapon so small it barely registered on the sensors. The torpedo struck the Eternal Dominion's shield generators, and the entire defensive grid collapsed. Impossible, Admiral Kraktos shouted. Our shields are impenetrable. They targeted the resonance frequency, Zax said, studying the damage reports. They know exactly how our technology works. They have been analyzing every piece of Zephyrian equipment for 15 years. More human ships appeared, emerging from their stealth fields like ghosts materializing from the void. They struck with surgical precision, targeting shield generators, weapon systems, and engine compartments. Within minutes, a dozen Zephyrian vessels had been disabled. Asterisk all ships, emergency scatter. Admiral Kraktos commanded, reform at rally point 7, but the human ships were already moving to intercept. They seemed to anticipate every Zephyrian maneuver, appearing exactly where they were needed to cut off escape routes or prevent regrouping. They are herding us, Zax realized. This is not a battle. This is a trap. Trap. Admiral Kraktos turned. To face him, what do you mean? They do not want to destroy us, Zax explained. They want to study us. Every weapon we fire, every tactical decision we make, they are recording and analyzing. They are turning this battle into a learning experience. As if to prove his point, the human ships suddenly changed their tactics. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, they began to engage in direct combat. But their weapons had changed too. Where? They had been using energy weapons. They now switched to projectile weapons that seemed designed specifically to penetrate Zephyrian armor. They are adapting in real time, Zax said. Everything we do, they counter within minutes. This is Mars all over again, but on a massive scale. Impossible, Admiral Kraktos repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. They cannot adapt that. Quickly, they are not adapting, Zax corrected. They are implementing. They have already prepared for every possible scenario. They know us better than we know ourselves. The battle raged for hours, but it was clear from the beginning that the outcome was inevitable. The Zephyrian fleet, despite its overwhelming numerical advantage, was being systematically dismantled. Human ships appeared and disappeared like phantoms, striking with devastating precision and vanishing before retaliation could be brought to bear. Admiral, the communication officer called out, "We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Admiral Kraktos ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. The voice that emerged was the same one that had initially warned them to leave. Admiral Sarah Chen, calm and professional despite the carnage surrounding her fleet. "Admiral Kraktos, this is Admiral Chen. I am offering you the same terms we offered your people at Mars 15 years ago. Withdraw from our system, and we will allow your surviving ships to depart safely. Continue this assault, and we will destroy every vessel in your fleet." "You cannot be serious," Admiral Kraktos said. "We still outnumber you 4-1. Numbers are irrelevant," Admiral Chen replied. "We have had 15 years to prepare for this moment. We know your tactics, your technology, your limitations. We have built our entire defense strategy around countering your capabilities. You cannot win this battle." Zax stepped forward. "Admiral Chen, this is Commander Zax Corvin. I was at Mars." A pause. Then, "Commander Corvin, I read the reports. You fought well at Mars. Your people showed honor in defeat, and you showed mercy in victory," Zax replied. "I urged my leaders to heed the warning Mars provided. They chose not to listen." "They chose poorly," Admiral Chen said. "But the offer of safe passage remains. For the sake of the warriors who follow orders they did not create, we will allow your fleet to withdraw." Admiral Kraktos looked around. The bridge, seeing the devastation displayed on every screen. Nearly half his fleet was disabled or destroyed. The remainder was scattered, leaderless, and demoralized. "We accept your terms," he said finally. "All vessels, cease fire and prepare for withdrawal." The human ships immediately stopped there. Attacks, moving to form a corridor through which the Zephyrian vessels could retreat. As the Eternal Dominion limped toward the edge of the system, Zax remained at the observation deck, watching Earth recede into the distance. "How?" Admiral Kraktos asked, joining him. "How did they become so formidable in just 15 years? "They did not become formidable," Zax replied. "They already were. We just forced them to show us. I do not understand. Humans do not fight. Like us," Zax explained. "They do not follow our rules or our traditions. They fight to survive, and in fighting, they become more than they were before. Mars taught them that we existed. It taught them that we were a threat, and it taught them that they could win. But their technology, their tactics, built from our own," Zax interrupted. "Every piece of equipment we left behind, every tactical pattern we employed, every weakness we revealed, they studied it all. They turned our own strengths against us." Admiral Kraktos stared out at the stars, his mandibles clicking in distress. "What do we tell the High Council?" "The truth," Zax said. "That we encountered a species that does not just fight wars. They become war itself. They adapt, they learn, they evolve. And once they have learned to fight you, they never forget. And if the Council decides to send a larger fleet..." Zax turned to face the Admiral, his eyes reflecting the cold light of the stars. "Then we will face a species that has learned to fight a larger fleet, and they will be ready." The journey back to Zephyrian space took 3 weeks. During that time, reports filtered in from other sectors of the galaxy. The humans were not content to simply defend their home system. They had begun to expand, to explore, to make contact with other species. But they did not come as conquerors. They came as liberators. Worlds that had been enslaved by the Zephyrian hegemony were suddenly free. Species that had been subjugated for centuries were rising up, armed with human technology and human tactics. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a small blue planet that had refused to bow to superior force. When the Eternal Dominion finally reached Zephyrian space, Zax was not surprised to find that the High Council had already been dissolved. The survivors of the Earth expedition had arrived first, carrying with them the truth of what they had faced. High Councilor Vextar was waiting for him at the spaceport, her once proud carapace now dulled with age and defeat. "You were right," she said simply. "We should have listened." "You could not have listened," Zax replied. "It was not in your nature. You saw only what you wanted to see, believed only what you wanted to believe. The humans understood this. They counted on it. And now we live with the consequences," Zax said. The humans will not come for us unless we give them reason. But if we do, if we ever again threaten their world or their people, they will come, and when they do, they will not offer terms. What will you do now? Vextar asked. Zax looked up at the stars, thinking of the small blue planet that had changed everything. I will remember, he said. I will remember what happens when you underestimate the power of a species that refuses to surrender. I will remember Mars, and I will remember Earth, and the humans. The humans will continue to be human, Zax replied. They will explore, they will discover, they will push boundaries that others fear to cross. And if anyone is foolish enough to threaten them again, they will learn what I learned 15 years ago, which is that some species are not meant to be conquered, Zax said. They are meant to be respected. And if you cannot respect them, then you must fear them, because they will never stop fighting, never stop adapting, never stop becoming more than they were before. He turned and walked away, leaving Vextar alone with her thoughts and her regrets. Behind him, the stars continued their eternal dance, and somewhere among them, a small blue planet continued its journey through the cosmos, carrying with it a species that had proven something the galaxy had not expected, that sometimes the smallest and seemingly weakest could become the strongest of all. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.